G'day, fans, and welcome to another exciting episode of the old Talking Stuff, where I and my lad Aaron just chat about science fictions. There's all these things going on at the moment. Mr. Aaron, how you going, old son?
Wasn't this a mistake wearing a red top? I look like a frickin' Jaffa, but it's too late to do anything about that now.
Dude, what I'd give to be able to roll you down the aisle, I tell you what, would be a very exciting stuff. So there you go. How's life treating you, old son? In the world of Aaron, what is the latest news going on?
Life's been good. It's been a busy couple of weeks. So busy, I took today off and have just worked from home. So that's a bit of a change of pace. Had a busy Easter. It's school holidays. And when you've got kids, it's a whole different change of gears. What about you, mate? How are you doing?
There we go. Oops, push the wrong button. I'm doing all right, actually, just plodding along, doing my thing. And there's a lot to cover off tonight because there's things going on absolutely everywhere in the old sci-fi world. And I guess we should probably get along to kicking it all off because otherwise we will be here longer than we plan to be. So let's get started with a little bit of this. All right, so the first thing that's come up now, I don't know, I saw this today. I don't know if it's completely legitimate or not. Is the fact there's talk about good old Orville season 4. Now, whether it happens or doesn't happen, I guess is a thing unto itself. But I'm going to say, I'm just asking you, would you like it if Orville season 4 came back?
Absolutely. I really loved Orville. It kind of stepped into the space, the void left by Star Trek, where Star Trek wasn't being Star Trek. And I think because the Orville did so well, we've had the course correction in later Star Trek, which has guided it back to be more like Star Trek again.
That's a very good point, actually. A lot of people realize that when Orville came out, it was up against Discovery, Star Trek Discovery, and there was that old saying, it's what Star Trek should have been. And of course, that may have actually prompted the creation of Strange New Worlds, which has put Star Trek back onto a more regular course, I guess. And as a consequence of that, it seems to be going on quite well. So, but if Orville season 4 does actually occur, it's going to be setting a pretty high bar that it's got to follow because seasons 1 to 3 have been very successful. So we watched that one with great interest. Sorry, dude.
Sorry, Orville is an interesting show because it really started out like a comedy show with science fiction stories, but the last series I would say wasn't really a comedy anymore. The writing and the science fiction was at the forefront, and it had humor. So it was more like some of the funny episodes of Next Generation rather than a comedy show, and I really love that. So if they make a season 4, I hope they keep that route.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see with bated breath as to whether that occurs or not. Now, this one popped up today. It was actually published about a couple of weeks ago, but I only saw it today, and I showed it to you, and you hadn't actually seen it before either. There's apparently a bit of a kerfuffle regarding to do with the trailers and things coming out for the old Doctor Who. The BBC won't use AI to promote Doctor Who again after being yelled at by fans. Mr. Aaron, were you one of the ones doing the yelling?
I was one of the ones that was indifferent because I didn't see it. The thing for me is anything this week, because we have April Fools, I hate people that just put fake news up. And so I tend to not really take anything too seriously. This was a real one. And it's probably a storm in the teacup where the BBC have decided they're not going to use AI to generate advertising because that puts other people out of business, which fair enough. Like, I think AI has its place, but where it starts replacing people, I think that's where we go too far.
Yeah, I think that was part of behind the whole actors and writers strike and whatever else that was going on in Hollywood for a couple of years. And there was a little bit of that involved as well. And there's been talk by a lot of people about saying, well, okay, why hire writers when you can just get AI to generate everything for you? But if it was from a marketing thing, which is I thought this thing was about, the idea that the phrase said BBC were yelled at. I mean, how do you do that? How do you yell? You just type an uppercase in all the Instagram posts, or what?
With lots and lots of exclamation marks.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's crazy. If anybody out there has any other news that they want to post, I mean, I saw yesterday, I don't know if it's even been confirmed because I haven't seen it anywhere else, that Star Trek Discovery, as we mentioned earlier, has been confirmed for another 2 more years for season 6 and 7. But even on the Wikipedia page, it still says season 5 is its last one. So don't know, but we watched, and that could have been an April Fool's thing. Who knows? So, but at the moment, it's still definitely just the 5 years.
You've got to remember, Wikipedia can be edited by anyone, so you can put anything on there, and someone will believe it.
I tell you what, though, it can be damn fast sometimes. You'll hear about something has happened in the news. You know, it's just like, oh, you read the news, blah blah blah, just passed away. You go Wikipedia, and bang, already got the death notice up there. I think people are sitting there waiting for it to happen.
Wikipedia had that 2 weeks ago.
Just got to press the enter key to send it out. A couple of trailers that we're going to discuss. What? Oh, sorry. Sorry, just some people sending me messages. Absolutely fantastic, which is very cool. Star Trek Discovery premiere today is definitely the final season. Okay, yeah, I thought as much. As I said, I haven't seen anything otherwise to say that it's going to be continuing on past season 5. Funnily enough, we're about to show you a show that's coming out this time next week. Funnily enough, it's a series called Fallout, which I thought was kind of groovy. And of course, the trailer for that has just come out. And I don't know if you're familiar with this at all, but it's based on a video game that's almost like 30 years old now. It's had all these iterations that have come out that entire time. Very Silo-esque, if you know the TV series Silo, people living underground while the nuclear wars and all that sort of stuff have been going on out in the open. And of course, people eventually venture out to see what the world is like. But did you see this, Mr. Aaron, and how did it float your boat?
I did say it. It's not a game I ever played. Interestingly enough, my introduction to Fallout is actually through all the merchandise it generates, because every time they release the game or an update or something, all the pop vinyls come out. I mean, it's even in the advert. You've got product placement right there in the trailer. So I am aware of it, not through playing it. It actually looks like it's a good quirky science fiction with a big budget. So I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, I think it's on Amazon Prime, and as I said, it comes out next Thursday. It's not a unique story. In fact, there was even a comedy like this one with Brendan Fraser. When they're buried underground for X amount of decades, and they come out, and the whole world's completely changed. But I can't think of the Blast from the Past. That was it, and that was just a normal comedy. The interesting thing about this is that when you see the gunslinger person who's actually in the show. He's apparently known as a ghoul, and he's been alive for the entire couple of 100 years that this entire show, this guy here, has been occurring. So he's lived throughout the entire apocalypse. And of course, the apocalypse started after World War II. So it's a slight deviation from Earth's real history.
Yeah.
Interesting. It goes for 8 episodes. And as I said, it's based on the game, but visually, it certainly looks good. And I tend to agree with you. They've put a bit of money and effort into this. So, as always, video games translated into TV shows and movies have had a bit of a checkered history over the journey. So, what do you think?
I think I'm probably at the advantage of not playing the game, because I have noticed when these things are released, like Halo, I thought was great. And then I had all these people going, but it doesn't follow the games, and they've changed this and they've changed that. And I absolutely get that, because I know they've wrecked some books that I've loved. But I do also appreciate that, without having that baggage from playing the game, I might go in fresher.
And I agree with you. And as it turns out, we will be discussing Halo in the next week or two, because I've got to catch up with it myself. That's Halo Season 2. And you are right. Video games for the pure. Same with some novels. The TV series Foundation. You and I love the series Foundation, but people who really love the books can't stand it because they just change so much. And I guess that's it's an unusual scenario. As you once said, you buy the property and then you just change the property, and you go, well, why buy it in the first place if you're just going to change it? So I totally get it. But
you only have to change it 10%, and then you can have the property for free.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Or at least change the name. So it's a contentious one, but Fallout for some people it probably will work. For others, because they might go, you know what, it really doesn't work for me at all. However, either way, it's coming out this time next week. I assume that's going to be episode 1 as opposed to the whole lot coming out in one go. Yeah. To see what people think of it. So, but there was merchandise for the game. Yes, I hear you now. So, yeah, very, very cool. The trailer for this came out a couple of weeks ago. And the movie itself doesn't come out for another couple of months. But of course, it's the old Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. The problem with the Planet of the Apes movies is the titles are so freaking long now. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and you go, oh my god.
No, I think the next one should be the Phantom Menace of the Planet of the Apes.
There you go. That absolutely works for me. So this is set 300 years after War of the Planet of the Apes. Was it War from the Planet? Whatever. And I read about it today, and I thought it was really interesting because it's a completely ape-dominated society, and the leader of the apes is somebody called, I think it's Proximus Caesar, and it has a slightly religious overtone where it's like saying, well, we're a little group, but this dude wants to become a bigger group, and he's twisted the teachings of Caesar from the Rise trilogy, and is bringing all these groups in together, looking for human technology. Which that in itself sounds really interesting, because in the original Planet of the Apes series, the apes were actually technologically advanced. But I looked at this, and I'm a huge Potter fan, and I thought, oh, okay, this is an interesting story that's come out of nowhere. What are your thoughts, Old Son?
My problem with the new Planet of the Apes is just the uncanny valley with the apes. I much prefer, actors in suits and special effects being the masks rather than the CGI. It doesn't ruin the story or anything. Just for me, it just is a bit off. I know people are the other way around, where they think that the old masks look crap and this is all new and fantastic. So I have to get over that before I can get into the story. The one thing I did like is they sort of did that mirror scene from the original Planet of the Apes where you see all the humans running and getting caught in a net. And I'm just thinking, any day now, Mark Wahlberg's going to turn up in his spaceship. And so what did you think?
No, it kind of works for me. It's interesting that they're trying to like have a whole bunch of new stories come out centered around this particular time frame. And it's intriguing because the idea is that the lead character is a chimpanzee, and he teams up with the girl, and they go off doing their thing, whatever that happens to be. I don't know. I'm intrigued, but unlike you, I actually don't mind the CG apes. I think they've done a really good job with them ever since they did Rise all those years ago, and it was a very good series, I've got to say. So, and it's not very often where you see dominating apes where the humans win in the end, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I don't hate the CG apes. I just love it or hate it. Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. The one thing you couldn't fault about that was the ape masks and stuff like that. And I do think it would have been, my personal preference would have been that's how they filmed these new ones too. But for me, I'm never going to love anything better than the old 60s and 70s Planet of the Apes anyway. So it doesn't really matter, does it?
Very cool, which we'll be covering off in a few ticks. Regarding Fallout, Guy said it was a great game, very choose your own adventure type of stuff, which was kind of cool. You are right, Colin. The new Apes movie was filmed in Sydney. Even I didn't know that, which is kind of groovy. And Joe has mentioned about the Apes trailer looks okay. Have the other reboot films been any good? The answer is yes. They've been excellent, and we're about to cover that off very, very soon. Now, I got a chance to try out, because that's the end of our sort of news for the week. I got to try out something different here regarding an intro to a segment. I've just made this up today. Don't know if it's going to work, but let's have a listen.
I'll have it all figured out by the time we reach the frontier.
What's that?
The frontier.
There we go. Completely meaningless, but it's a bit of fun. And
you're always thinking. You're an ideas man.
Oh, what can I say? Yeah, they drip out of my head like something you'll never see before. All right, so we're going to be chatting about the old Potter franchise, funnily enough. So, and we're going to be, that's the reason why, because of the new movie, we thought, oh, well, let's cover this off a little bit. There are going to be spoilers for those who haven't seen either any of the movies ever or any of the TV series. And yes, there's been a lot of Planet of the Apes stuff over the journey. So it all kicked off, Mr. Aaron, based on a book, Monkey Planet by Pierre Boulet, when the apes used to speak French. So what do you reckon? That's a ooh la la moment for the simians. What do you reckon?
And one of the interesting facts about that is the paperback version used artwork from Doctor Who at one point to advertise the Planet of the Apes paperback. They used ogrons instead of the apes.
Jesus Christ. You've been saving that one. Docky Who always finds a way into this show, doesn't it? As Rusky Babes will attest. Yeah, Docky. Oh, my God. How do you draw these links? I'll never understand it. Anyway, so for those who don't know, because some people out there may not even be aware of it, there were 5 movies made in the 60s and the 70s. The first 2 were set in one timeline, then they sort of went back into the current contemporary timeline from Escape, Conquest, and then later on for Battle. And as you were saying about the ape makeup being traditional makeup, of course, that's where this all came from, which is particularly cool. From there, as you know, this is just the film perspective. You did have the reboot movie made in 2001 from Tim Burton, which kind of worked for some people, but mostly didn't work for others. And of course, that led us to the new movies, which is where we are now, the Rise trilogy, as they're known as. And of course, that means that the 4th movie is Kingdom, which is coming out very, very soon. But yeah, are you an apely dude? Would you class yourself as an apely dude there, Aaron?
Well, do you see what is just there behind my shoulder?
Oh, how lucky is that? Right, strategically placed. Is that what you're telling me?
that isn't even staged. That's the VHS of Planet of the Apes. That's just on there. I love Planet of the Apes. It's one of those things I think I have, it came out before I was born, so I've always known Planet of the Apes. As a kid, it was amazingly good, and then as you grow up a bit, you see some of the faults in some of the stories. And then I was super excited by the return when Tim Burton was going to, Tim Burton was at the top of his game when that was coming out. So I really thought that was going to be an amazing movie, and it was more a what did I just watch experience. I don't know, we've kind of skipped them. I loved the TV show, even though it was filmed on the Hollywood backlots as well. Okay. I really have a fondness for that. And it's kind of one of the forgotten sort of periods of Planet of the Apes. And boy, Roddy McDowall turned up in Planet of the Apes a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, so he did all of them except for Beneath. Cornelius didn't appear in Beneath, at least not in. Actually, it might have been historical footage, but not actually filmed for the movie because Roddy McDowall was busy making a movie of his own, funny enough. But yeah, because he's Cornelius all the way through the other 4 movies, and in the TV series he was Galen. And I agree with you. The TV series was quite good, even though it kind of cocked up the continuity with the rest of the movies. But it was a good story and it worked well. And a lot of people have forgotten there was actually a TV series made in the 70s. And I think the movies have kind of run their course and they go, we need something that's cheaper. Oh, we'll do a TV show instead. And that's what came out of it. So, but for a lot of people, being an ape fan was really, really groovy at the time. And a lot of people really dialed into it. And some of the stories are actually still relevant even today. So aside from Planet of the Apes, the first movie that came out, which was effectively an anti-nuclear war movie, for those who didn't put that distinction together, Escape from the Planet of the Apes is a classic when it comes to the whole racial segregation of people, because the apes land on Earth. There are those who love them, there are those who hate them, but the moment they can start procreating, and this is where Caesar comes from, suddenly they're the enemy because people can see that they're going to be the future of the world. And as a consequence, they get hunted and killed. And you sit and think about it from an observer's point of view, and you go, well, that's a really terrible thing to do. But in real life, that's probably what would happen when you see I'm the apex predator of my species, but there's suddenly someone above me. And there's a lot to be said about that. So I've always said to people, if you're going to watch a movie from the series, Escape from the Planet of the Apes is a fantastic one. So yeah.
As soon as it looked like they were taking over, it should have just been bushmeat curry for the lot of them.
Well, that's right, because in the movie, for those who don't know, how it works is that the humans get infected by a disease that turns effectively everybody mute. This is all covered off in the Rise reboot, the Rise, Dawn and War reboot. And the apes sort of evolved from there. Now, in the original series, Caesar is the only one who can speak because he's the product of Cornelius and Zero. And he teaches somehow the other apes to talk and they gain intelligence the way they go. In the Rise trilogy, of course, it's through all experimentation. So they've been given drugs and they've been experimented on, as animals are in real life. And they gain the ability to speak from that. So it's a slightly different way of progressing. But the ultimate aim is the same, where the apes dominate, but the humans become mute and effectively lose their level of intellect and intelligence. So, which is interesting.
It's interesting. Everyone remembers, of course, the shocking twist from the end of the first Apes movie. But when I watched them, because I already knew, it had been spoilt that it was Earth. The end to the second movie is a bit of a shocker as well, like blowing up the entire planet. I mean, I did not expect that, especially as it was only the second movie in a series of 5. And talking about the TV series, yes, there was one, Zach. The stakes in that seemed incredibly low, where they'd wander from ape village to ape village, and one episode would be about teaching the apes how to make a fishing net instead of fishing with a reel. And of course, the apes would take all the what do you call it? We discovered this, and then the poor humans would have to be moved on again, kind of thing. It is a case, I think, of they had all the costumes and they had all the locations, so it was a very cheap TV series to make. Maybe they didn't have the writing.
I think, wasn't there a hang gliding sequence in the TV series as well? Yeah, because
No,
the apes don't have flight.
That was the Ewoks. That was the Ewoks.
So yeah, you are right. With the second movie, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, I mean, they didn't want to do any more sequels. They just blew everything up. But they realized, oh my God, we're on such a winner here. Let's just go back in history and set it in contemporary Earth's time, and which actually worked. That's where Escape came from. And of course, you are right. And this is the thing that really irked me when the video or the DVDs came out for the first movie. They actually had the Statue of Liberty on the cover. Spoiler alert central. I was like, oh, you're friggin' nuts. There are people out there who haven't seen these movies, kids. Don't just ruin it for them. And yeah, I was really irked when I saw that. Yeah.
Do you know what I haven't seen? I haven't seen a copy of the Tim Burton one with Abraham Lincoln on the cover.
Yeah, actually, and it's very funny. I've had discussions with people before regarding from the 2001 movie, the ending. So Mark Wahlberg's character comes back to Earth, and all of Earth is identical to what we have, but it's all ape-based. And of course, he goes to the is it the Washington Monument where he has the Abraham Lincoln statue?
Yeah.
And of course, it's General Thade who looks like Abraham Lincoln. And of course, he gets arrested by all these police officers and whatever, and they're all apes. And of course, the ending was just done just to make it look good for the ending. There was no story to it. They said that'll look cool. Just chuck it in. Don't worry about explaining it. What a way to finish the movie. And it worked really well.
Here's a question I have for you. In that first reboot of the Planet of the Apes, there is a news thing where they say the Icarus probe has been launched and it's been lost. Do you think they will come back to that in the last movie and they will do a big... No?
No, that was just a throwaway line. And for those who don't know, the ship that was launched in the first movie was known as the Icarus, but then it got renamed to Liberty One later on, so you can call it one or the other. But I heard that at the time. I go, that's actually, I thought it was just a nice little gag. Now, guess what, fans? We have one of these. So we've got a fun factoid coming up, which is particularly cool. The twist ending was from Rod Serling, which is a particularly groovy because in the book, the original book has a twist ending as well, because the idea is that these two astronauts come across this letter written by this person, this French guy who came across this entire ape civilization, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end of the book, you discover that the astronauts go, that's all complete rubbish. We don't believe it. Both the astronauts are apes. And that was the twist ending for the book, which was particularly cool. The other thing that they did, aside from the TV series, and Zach has said, oh, was there a TV series? There was actually two. You had the live action one and you had the animated one as well. And the thing about the animated one, albeit cheap and nasty as it was, the Society of the Apes was actually very, very technologically advanced, which was what it was meant to be in the original movie. They just didn't have the money to do it. So they actually made the apes a lot more primitive. But in actual fact, the apes were meant to be technologically advanced like our society today. But they did that in the animated series because they could do it. I don't recall seeing it myself, but there you go. What do you reckon?
You can tell that Planet of the Apes is so popular because it has seeped into popular culture. It turns up all over the place with people like quoting, "You maniacs, you blew it up," or Dr. Zaius money boxes turn up in a movie, or things like that. It really is one of those franchises that people maybe not bring up a lot, but it's always constantly there.
Exactly right. So there was a good line here. The sign language for the moment was a clever piece and plausible. That's especially in the new movie or new movies. And it's very good, especially when you got, now it's not Zaius, it's Maurice. That's the name of the orangutan, and they're using sign language to talk to each other, which is very, very cool. It's and of course the humans don't know that they're doing this.
Some people call him Maurice.
Yeah, very, very good. And of course, you were talking about the ape makeup earlier, and of course, that's what made the movies work. Right, the makeup was spectacular. Now, of course, they look nothing like real apes, like the chimpanzees of Earth of today and the gorillas and whatever. But it didn't matter. It was just a cool effect, and you really, really sold it. And even like in the background, guys, they all look great. And I reckon everything hinged on that working. If they had to cut corners and made it really dodgy looking, it would just would have died in the ass big time. But because of that, people fell for it. It sold the show, and here we are today. And I tend to agree with you. It was the coolest part of the entire thing. Everyone wanted to be an ape. What do you reckon, dude?
And you would know our friend Alfie, who turns up at conventions sometimes. He has an amazing Planet of the Apes costume. He's a local, and I think even his son has come up as a child ape at some point as well. So it really has impacted on popular culture. The other thing I want to bring up, don't you love? Oh, Charlton Heston is contractually obliged to do 2 lines in one movie. What's this? Now Nova can speak, like after playing possum for one entire movie. It's very convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny that because in the 2001 movie, this is probably the hardest part to deal with if you're an ape fan. It's clearly set in the ape society, but in their world, the humans can speak. And you go, well, hang on, that's kind of breaking the rules a little bit from the original story. But you can understand why they did it, because they needed to give them characterization. Whereas Nova in the original movie was just like an offshoot. It was Taylor.
Yeah.
All the focus was on him. And so the fact that the girl can speak, and you go, oh, yeah, it's kind of like a little bit frustrating. Does it work? Does it not work? Who knows? But yeah, obviously they're going to be breaking those rules again. I'm assuming that the girl in the new movie Kingdom can speak as well. If she doesn't, that will actually be kind of cool. She said she'd be completely mute, but I don't really know. I've seen the trailer, but I don't remember it.
Are you saying women shouldn't be able to speak, Dags?
No, I'm not saying that at all, dude. So there we go. So but in the continuity of the show, yeah, they're actually all meant to be mute. But it worked for Nova in the first movie. The fact that she couldn't speak, and that was actually quite good. And of course, they can't write or do anything like that, but they can learn to wear clothes, which, of course, clearly, realistically, in real life, they wouldn't do. But you know what?
Boy, wasn't Dr. Zaius upset when they found the talking baby doll.
Yes, exactly right. And I will look at the video. Hey, look, if you look at the movie, it was a 4 million years BC. If Raquel Welch can wear clothing, I mean, they wouldn't be wearing clothing back then either. But you know, that's for someone else to figure out. But yes, very, very cool. So I forgot where I was. What? It's like I never knew. It looks like you finally made a monkey out of me. Exactly right. Did you know actually in the Ape franchise, the word monkey is actually an insult? There you go. So
see how Russell says it's all Halloween masks. That would have been a really good way to defeat the apes if you just put on the silver shamrock ad and all their heads dissolve and snakes and bugs come out.
Everyone wanted to be an ape, and to be fair, even though they were the bad guys, everyone wanted to be a gorilla. So oh, here we go. Oh, hang on, I got to do one of these again. Get my money's worth out of that. There was a Japanese TV ripoff called Time of the Apes. Oh, there you go. How about that? So, which is very, very cool. And speaking of things that were like Halloween masks and whatever else, there was merchandising for this particular series. And of course, the old Planet of the Apes merchandise. There wasn't much of it, but what there was, people really loved it and enjoyed it. What do you reckon of that, Mr. Aaron? Very, very cool. Be well worth being putting into the Aaron's Collectible shop.
Yeah, you say there wasn't a lot of it, but at the time, before Star Wars had been the big franchise, it was one of the more franchised movies. I mean, they had the Mego figures. One of my favorite items, which I had as a kid, was an ape parachutist, which was basically a little plastic toy where you shoved a parachute in the back and threw it up as hard as you could. Nothing to do with any of the movies. As far as I can remember, there was no parachuting apes with guns, and they've obviously got some old army toy and just put a new head on it. The Apes merchandise is actually really expensive. To get the nice stuff boxed and in good condition, very, very hard, particularly in Australia, and very, very expensive. I don't know if we've got any pictures of them there as well. There was a fantastic comic book run of Planet of the Apes, and the great thing about the comic books, each one of them had a really well painted cover, which made them really attractive to adults and kids. So it was a franchise that did have a bit of merchandise.
Jeff Rose said the annual were there for the TV series, not the movies. Yeah, that's okay. It was just for the entire franchise. So, but there was a lot of good stuff, but there wasn't as much as there probably could have been. In retrospect, if it was to all be created, if the original series was today, and they would probably make a lot more for it. Even for the new movies, there wasn't a lot produced. So, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, sometimes with merchandise, it is, as you've mentioned, some of it can be just rubbish. But yeah, there's a big following for it. The new trilogy, for those who haven't seen it, is well worth watching. The last movie is a bit of hard work. It's not a very pleasant movie. My personal preference is the middle one, Dawn, because it's one of the few sci-fi movies where it's not the humans who start the conflict, it's the apes. And they're the protagonists and the antagonists. And I really like that. It really worked for me. Normally in these things, it's always the humans causing all the problems and the animals have got to respond accordingly. In Dawn, it's the exact reverse, which is very cool.
The other great piece of merchandise that I'm sure Jeffro would have, there is a fantastic ape bust that has all the original DVD movies in, which is a really unique way of housing DVDs and a great display item.
Very, very cool. For those who are interested and want to learn more, there are a couple of books that were produced from a dude called Rich Hadley. This is just to do with the original movies and TV series, nothing to do with the reboots. A couple of good books if you're interested in that sort of stuff, the timeline and the lexicon. And of course, one of the coolest images from all the series was when they did the hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil moment from Planet of the Apes, which is very cool. What do you reckon of that, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, there's a lot of little nods to stuff like that through the whole movie. I always used to, when I'd get in a fight with my brother when I was young, start chanting, "Ape has killed ape, ape has killed ape." So it is one of those things that's been with me forever.
Yeah, well, that was their mantra in their society: "Ape shall never kill ape." And of course, one of them eventually does in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, and of course, in Dawn, there's a fair bit of that going on. So anyway, that's our very brief chat about the franchise that was Planet of the Apes, as I mentioned earlier. Kingdom for the Planet of the Apes, the movie with a really long title, is coming out in a couple of months' time. I'll have to check it out. We will probably discuss it on this show, so keep an eye open for that. But now,
I hope they do make Lexicon of the Planet of the Apes as a movie, but I'd really like to see Piano Accordion of the Planet of the Apes as well.
Freaking idiots. I like that sound of that. Exactly right. Very, very, very good. Just give it an extra squeeze and away we go. All right. So, aside from other than that silly comment that comes from Aaron, we've got something more serious coming up because it's now time for this.
A question.
All right. As always, I have a question for Mr. Aaron without any warning whatsoever. And I found this one to be quite interesting. So, Mr. Aaron, there's all this stuff going on in the world. Here is the question I want to pose to you. Is there life left in the Transformers movie franchise? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because they've been pumping out Transformer movies for a dozen years. Some of them have just rated really terribly, yet there's still more to come. And they're making them as one thing, but are people actually watching these things and enjoying them? And hence the reason why I'm asking the question.
It is an interesting question because Transformers would be one of our most popular cabinets in the shop. We sell a lot of Transformer toys. And that popularity with collectors does not jump across to what the studios are making as movies. Almost universally, when they pull out another Transformer movie, everybody hates it or is disappointed by it. The sort of best comments you get on the Transformer movies was, "It was better than I thought it was going to be. Maybe it's a 3 out of 10." The thing that I think when we talk about a lot of these franchises is you've got the money makers who want to make a movie that sells toys, and they get in the way of actually a decent script and real writers. And I think the Transformer franchise, I don't think it's going to go away because they're just going to make cheaper movies for the returns because they sell a lot of toys. But I think the well has been poisoned so badly by movie after movie that have disappointed fans and changed like the backstories and then rebooted in the 80s. I mean, a good example is the Bumblebee movie, which is not the last one, the one before, where they had 2 minutes at the start on Cybertron, and every single person who came in and talked about that movie said, "That's the movie we want to see. Why aren't they making that movie with all the G1 Transformers and the war on Cybertron and the origins and stuff?" But they keep giving us boy and his car, girl and his car, Mark Wahlberg and his truck, or something like that. When I have to say, when I went and saw the first Transformer movie, saw the midnight session when it came out, that helicopter comes in and then it freezes and they make the Transformer noise from the cartoon, which is like nostalgia bait, and it transforms and the entire cinema erupted, like cheered, which doesn't happen too much. And at the end of the movie, they did a really good job on that. It was like 8 out of 10. And there were 2 or 3 parts I didn't like. I didn't like the stupidness with the spy and some of that. And I go, if they iron that out for the next movie, they've got a really good franchise. And what they seem to do is take the bits that no one liked and make them the central part of the next movie. And so I thought every Transformer movie was half as good as the movie before. I don't think Transformers is losing steam because it sells toys, but as a creative movie franchise, I think it's pretty much, ideas bankrupt. It's just the same thing over and over and over. When robots fighting robots is boring, you're doing something wrong.
There's a lot to take from what you said, and I agree with you. When the first movie came in, there's a lot of comments. I'm going to get to them in a minute. When the first movie came out, it was great. It just looked spectacular. Now, in retrospect, some people go, "Oh, it's a Michael Bay movie, a lot of explosions and all this sort of business." but it was a treat for the eyes. And I agree with you. When that helicopter turn up at the base and you don't realize it's actually a transformer until it transforms, what a way to start a movie. And that was like, I am completely sucked into this. I'm hooked into it. It's working for me. The Shia LaBeouf character, take it or leave it. The whole thing with, I think it was Megan Fox was the girl. Some of that is like, okay, where are we going with some of this? But where it was good, it worked really well. The robots looked spectacular. They sounded good. And it was a button pusher. And you go, oh my God, this is fantastic. Okay, done, finish. Then suddenly there's another movie and another one and another one and another one. And I'm thinking, is anybody even watching these things anymore? You see them come up on TV and it's like people are just tuned out completely. And I agree with you. Everybody has the nostalgia for the TV series and the toys from the 80s, but those fans don't seem to come across to the films that are being produced today. Bumblebee was an exception. A lot of people really dial into that. But I read tonight, they're already looking at spin-offs and sequels and connections with the G.I. Joe and whatever else and go, I think someone's kind of lost the plot here. Maybe it's because from a digital perspective, they've got all the models of all the Autobots and the Decepticons. They don't have to recreate those guys. They can just shove them into a visual effects washing machine and all this cool shit comes out and they go make a movie out of that. So
they are a really interesting franchise where you look at the money they make, and they do make a lot of money, but you find it very hard to find anyone who actually says they like them. And the other thing is they cut together an absolutely amazing trailer. Because, you know, they have robots transforming and robots fighting and big epic space stuff. It makes a good trailer. I remember sitting in Age of Extinction with the Dinobots are coming back, which I'm like, oh, I'm sucked in. I've got to see the Dinobots on the big screen. And it got to the point where we're 2 hours in and the movie feels like it's winding down to end. I'm like, wait a second, the Dinobots aren't in it yet. And it went for another hour. When, like I said, when robots fighting robots at that level is boring, you're doing something wrong.
And the thing is, there's so much stuff going on the screen. You go, I can't see anything. But geez, it looks good and it sounds good. That's the most important thing. I'm going to get you to move a fraction to your left, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you, sir. We'll move your camera to the left. Okay. So, and I agree with you. On paper, it sounds fantastic. And it's just like there's just all these movies coming out. I'd be amazed if someone says, yep, that's my Transformers. I don't even know about the original toys. I don't care about the TV series. The movies are my thing. I'd be curious to see if there's someone out there like that. Some of the comments, Guy said Transformers needs a 20-year layoff to really reset. At the moment, it won't, because as you said, if it's making the money, they're going to keep pumping these things out. And they do have plans for at least another 4 or 5 in the works. There's some being produced even as we speak. Marcus said he used to love Transformers, but the nostalgia of the 80s cartoons and the original toys back then, not so much of the new stuff. So, yeah, as I said, there's going to be fans. And the reason why I brought this up is because in the store you have one of your customers, Roz, who comes to the store. She's a massive Transformer fan. Like that's her bread and butter. But does she talk about the movies at all? Or was she, from her perspective, they just don't exist?
Usually she talks about them the same as we have, where the first one was okay. There's a couple of good scenes in the other ones, but pretty much if they make toys from them, that's what she's interested in.
Yep, fair enough. Zach has said the first one was good. The second one had too much action. After that, Michael Bay lost the plot. Yeah, exactly right. So it would seem that the following of the continuity, which I believe has all been a bit sort of skew-iffed along the way, it's almost like they're just making them for the here and the now, not trying to connect them into the previous stories. People are sick and tired of studios remaking popular TV shows as movies. Yeah, we've sort of covered that off before. It's all about the money. If they make the money, they'll just keep making these things. The question will be one day, will they just stop making them because nobody's going anymore? They've just said enough is enough. But clearly that day hasn't come yet, which is why I was intrigued to see what you think of it. Karen has said Terminator is going through the same thing. Yeah, Terminator, Aliens, Predator, all those sort of franchises. I picked Transformers specifically because, as I mentioned, Roz, who's a regular in your store, she talks about Transformers like there's no tomorrow. And I was just curious to see whether she either talks about it or even buys merchandise for the movies. But you are right. Merchandise for the movies, whichever movie it is, doesn't seem to walk out the door as much as the 80s stuff, does it?
And the thing that they've done over and over again with the Transformer movie franchise, they dangle carrots. Like I said, the Dinobots, which then weren't as good as the Dinobots you thought you were going to get. And the last one where they did sort of an adaptation of the Beast Wars. And I'm like, oh, that's actually good. They're rebooting. They're getting rid of the cars and stuff. We're going to... No, there's like 5 of the animal ones. And then it's all the normal Transformers again. So people who are really hyped up for a Beast Wars, Beast Machines movie, it didn't really get to that level.
Mm. So just to sort of finish up, there's a convention that occurs in England. It's a Transformers convention. I don't know what it's called. I do wonder if someone walks in going, "Yep, love the movies. They're the greatest thing ever. Forget the TV shows and the toys." I wonder if they get like ostracized or like sent out the or banned from entry or whatever.
I am
So
sure
yeah.
there's room in the trans community for everyone, Dags.
Oh, dude. Oh, that is absolutely fantastic. Gotta love that. That is absolutely ingenious. Very, very cool. All right, long may the Transformers live on, regardless of which version you like. All right, so we're going to move into our final topic. Once again, I had to produce an opening for this, and I thought, how am I going to do that? So I've just said, let's just chuck this in, shall we?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
And there we go. So very, very cool. No expense spared. So this is actually a bit more of a serious topic because it actually relates to you specifically. And of course, it is about, if I press the right button, is it about? Oh, hang on, I've lost my thing. Our technology's died on us, Mr. Aaron. Give me a second also. So talk about something interesting, will you?
Well, this kind of continues on from last week's topic of the death of physical media. We're really going down a dark path here now, aren't we, Dags? We're talking today about the death of bricks and mortar stores and just the ability to walk into a shop and browse and buy what you want. When nowadays there's so much more stuff online than there is actually in stores. The future of pop culture collectible shops. Now, it isn't a big secret. Probably the biggest and most well-known pop culture shop in Melbourne would be Minotaur Books. And that has gone through ups and downs over the years, from having multiple stores in really big boutique locations and central Melbourne to, I guess, Elizabeth Street, which is still a big store, to now, is it Flinders? Is it Flinders Lane?
Yeah, it's Little Collins.
Little Collins, and it's basically become just another Zing store with a couple of comic books thrown in. And it is one of those things where I loved, it was a weekend out for me, going around the pop culture stores, going to book exchanges, going down Chapel Street, and you would have all the different genres of stores that kind of fit together, going out to, country towns that would have you'd go down to Geelong or you'd go up to Bendigo, Ballarat, and you'd find the same kind of thing. And it really disappoints me that we're losing that kind of section of our heritage, I guess. I mean, I don't know where you used to get the pop culture stuff. I often say Google for me used to be the magazine racks at Alternate Worlds and Minotaur Books, because they would get the air freight editions of magazines in, and people could go in there and go, "Oh my goodness, they're making Halloween 6 and Michael isn't dead after all." And things like that, where now I do understand there is that sort of non-need for that because of the internet, but I'm one of those people who likes tangible shops and going in and meeting people. I often complain about my son. He meets people online and doesn't go out of his room. For me, like, the perfect weekend growing up was when there was a Doctor Who meeting in Essendon. I'd go there till lunch, and then for the afternoon, I'd go around book exchanges and shops and stuff like that. And I really think it's one of those dying experiences.
So you're an interesting one because, I mean, you have your own store, and I think you're definitely in the best position to sort of like discuss all this. And you've bucked the trend and opened up a shop of your own. It's been a few years now. And even though it's not a very big place, as you said, it's a destination store. If people come along to buy products that they can't find pretty much anywhere else. And that's why it works so well. But the hard part is actually getting people away from the computer screens and away from the internet and away from eBay, and actually physically turning up to a place where it's not just about buying a product, it's also about interacting with the people there. And even I have seen before where people have come into the shop, and I would say to them, a lot of the conversations you want to have, you can't have out in the outside world, because the outside world won't listen to you. You can't have this conversation at the Woolworths or at the greengrocers or whatever else. But in this store, if you want to have a conversation about pop culture, movies, TV shows, this is the time and the place. And as I've always said, if you do this stuff online, that's great, but effectively it's just words on a screen, no matter how you look at it, whether it's a Facebook page or whether it's a forum or whether it's Instagram or whatever. Face to face is the core connection of human interaction. And so that aside from just being able to buy products, having a shop to go to is a big thing. And as you know, you get plenty of people who come into the shop for the most part, one, to go shopping, but also to purchase things. And I think that's actually really important. That's the reason why these stores are so important to have.
Well, part of what you were saying as well is a lot of people come into the shop not to purchase things, but to have a social interaction, because there's not as many fan club meetings and different gatherings that these people can go to. We're cut down to a couple of big pro conventions a year that are often more of a family event rather than going and meeting up. I mean, there's still Star Walking and places like that where the clubs get together, but those clubs do have meetings anyway. What you were saying about coming into shops and you see someone who's browsing something, so you instantly know if you have a connection with them because you collect the same thing, or you have the same interest in what you watch and the genres that they're interested in. And you would have seen people come in and talk to me, and a complete stranger will come in and just jump into the conversation, and before you know it, there's 5 or 6 people debating on like whether the latest episode of Star Trek is good or a load of rubbish. And there's not many places you can do that anymore.
That's completely true, because the store is relatively small. Wherever you are, you can hear the conversations going on, and we've had conversations. And in the midst, some customer, we've never met this person before, say, I couldn't help but overhear what you were saying, and they stick their 5 cents in as well. And it's a key thing because this doesn't happen anywhere else, and pop culture in particular is really key because it's not the kind of conversation you can just have anywhere, as I said earlier. And as we've said with customers, they've come in and they've gone shopping for items, and even they've complained about buying things online because ultimately it's a picture on the screen. They don't really know what it is. And as I've said to them, they say, well, you're holding the item in your hand. You can physically see what it looks like. And that's just an experience you just don't get anywhere else. And as a consequence, it's a shame from that there's not more opportunities like this as far as the rest of Australia is concerned. But by the same token, you don't want too many because then there's obviously too much competition for you. But
Yeah.
it's good that you still exist and you're still there. And as was mentioned up here by Colin, there's much personalised experience at your shop, which everybody sees and experiences. And I think that's a key thing. And it's kind of funny that the rest of the world kind of just doesn't take notice of this, if that makes sense.
It is one of those unique experiences, and I don't want to, I guess, get egotistical or brag, but we have a lot of people come in just to talk to me about ideas they've had or stuff they've been thinking about. And it is a really strange situation where we have a shop, and the motto we have above the door: buying, selling, and chatting, because we do like to talk about nerdy stuff. And there are often days where I get nothing done because I'm talking the whole day just to people about different things. And it is a hub for so many different things. Colin said, you come in and talk about Star Trek, or Mark will come in and we'll go and have lunch and talk about Doctor Who, or Dags will come in and we'll talk about just about anything under the sun that's happened that week in like the pop culture circles. And where you say, oh, if more opened, it'd be bad for you because competition, I don't think that at all. I would be quite happy for more shops like ours to open and have more people having that experience. I mean, I don't want anyone opening up next door, but I do think it is good to get people out. And I don't want to preach to people about exercise or something like that. I am not the specimen of a person that should be doing that. But there is one of those sort of social connection things that slowly dies if we don't have shops like that as well. Often when I would go out shopping to these shops growing up, I wouldn't go by myself. There'd be 3 or 4 people and we'd all go around together. So it was sort of one of those things where I guess society has changed now, but it was a safe space for people who weren't wanting to go to the football or midnight oil concerts or something like that. So I do really miss the bricks and mortar stores and going around book exchanges and not just discovering what you can find that day. I was talking to someone in the shop. Again, it's about Doctor Who, the Target books. There's 150 of them and people try to collect them all. When I was growing up, it took me years and years to complete a set, probably 3 or 4 years of going around book exchanges. And I would not give up that experience for anything. You could get the whole set in an afternoon on eBay, not going out of the house and just ordering them, and they'd all rock up in the next week. And it is one of those things where I'm like, do you know what? It's nice to have something immediately, but you've actually lost the story behind each book. Now, I think one of the best things about you, Dags, is you're a storyteller, but you're sort of, a spoken word history of fandom. And these stories that you come out with when someone walks into the shop that you haven't seen for years, and or an event that happens because a new movie comes out and it's a reboot of something, and there's all these stories that all these people who don't come out of their house, they're never going to have such a rich tapestry of memories of growing up as part of fandom and going around shops and collecting things, because everything's just immediate from Amazon now.
Indeed. A few things I'm going to cover off, but I'm going to get into some of the comments. This is going back to the Minotaur discussion. So Mark would say he travelled out from Ballarat in the 90s on the train to Elizabeth Street and Docky Who, as far as the eye could see. How lucky to get now. You're lucky to get half a shelf. For those who remember Minotaur when they were in Swanson Street in Carlton. Now, if you're from overseas or not from Melbourne, you won't know what we're talking about. It was the go-to store for pop culture in the 80s. Rickety floorboards and magazines everywhere. And it was a complete mind spin because there was nowhere else to go at the time. And yeah, as you said, all that seems to be lost now, which is unfortunate, but probably not surprising. A good comment here from Russell. One of the problems is it was aimed at the teens, the 30s crowd, and still is, but I'm over 60 now, so nothing there for me. Funnily enough, we've discussed this, that people who are primarily attending your store are in the older age bracket, but there are exceptions to that rule. I mentioned the girl earlier, Roz, and she has a friend, Jamie. They're regulars to your store, and both of them are effectively in the Gen Y millennial category. So they're exceptions to the rule. It's a shame there's not more of them, but at least that's something. So that's actually good to see. So there are some young people out there who are into pop culture collecting. There might not be a lot, but they're definitely out there. Where were we? Mark has also said he enjoys your trip to your store. Yeah, and creates new friends, a great networking. I have met people at the store that I didn't know previously, so it certainly worked for me. Which is very, very groovy. I like this from Karen. Yeah, it's sunny. It's sunny outside. Bugger that. Go inside the shop and have a bit of a geek out. And it's what you do.
Dags, one of the things that happens to you, and you don't see it as much because you were there just on Saturdays. How many times have you span out because someone has walked in that you haven't seen for 20 years or 30 years? Yeah. That is a really amazing experience that happens, every couple of days, because you find people in the same communities, they might not be active in fandom, but they still like to check out the collectibles and buy something once in a while. And people bump into each other in the shop that haven't seen each other for decades, and they continue conversations that they were talking about the last time they saw each other. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely very trippy, that's for sure. Guys say collecting and fanfare is like golf. Once a great shot and you keep coming back. Totally agree with you. And that's the good thing about a store like the collectible stores. People do return. It's not like a one-time visit only. And it's good to see that you must be doing something right if people are wanting to come back. And I've found the personal interaction, as like Colin mentioned earlier, is critical to a shop. It's not about like you walk into a jewelry store and say, I want to buy a diamond ring, and just walk out and you're done. There's so much more to it than that. And so many people are missing out on that experience, which is really, really sad. So Joe said he always likes going to the shop. Completely agree with you on that one. As Chrissy said, echoing what you just said, going to the store and not seeing people you haven't seen in years, and is absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, it's a shame there's not more of these things, but they do exist in Melbourne. So, and that's the most important thing, in your shop's becoming a bit more of a haven for that. Unfortunately, you get more than 5 or 6 people in there, and it does get on the crowded side. And as I've seen, one of the funniest jokes, of course, is that people always turn up to talk to Aaron when he's about to have a hot lunch, as was the case last week. And that's the thing. You build up this massive catalogue of stories to tell, and you've got plenty of them. I reckon one day in the future you'd be able to hold a discussion, stories from Aaron's Collectables, and get a whole audience of people and just churn out one story after another, and they'd all be completely true, which is very, very cool.
Here's the phrase that you say if you want to be packed solid for 2 hours. I'm just going across the road to order a pizza.
exactly right. That's what happened last Saturday. For those who don't know, Aaron stood up, literally to stand up, and say, "I'm going across the road to buy a pizza," and a dude walked straight to the counter, started talking to him immediately. It was hysterical. Shane said about used to love going to Space Age Book. That was another sci-fi bookstore in the city, mostly literature-based though. It was walking distance from Minotaur Books, funny enough. And Minotaur was more TVs and movies, whereas Space Age was more sort of like proper sci-fi literature. And that has long since gone, which is very, very sad. So maybe I met Joe, met Greg King at Aaron's shop, not Ronnie. Okay, fair enough. And it is all very good stuff. So yeah, so if there's going to be more of them, then that'd be fantastic. Yeah, sorry, dude.
The one thing I have noticed in sort of the 80s and 90s when I used to go around to the collectible shops and book exchanges, there used to be a lot of vinyl shops, records. And the vinyl shops went away, but they've come back again because vinyl is now massively popular. And if you've got secondhand vinyl, there's a lot of people chasing it down. I don't know if the collectible shops will come back in the same way that vinyl has. It's something that's yet to be seen. I do think popular culture is more popular than it's ever been, which really shocks me that there aren't as many shops anymore.
Now, here's a question for you: any famous people besides you walked into your own store?
Yes, there's a few stories, like I probably wouldn't want to name them. You have a rapport with people. I usually treat famous people, when I say famous people, they might be on Australian television or stuff like that. I can't really think of too many international famous people. One story I will tell: when I managed a secondhand record shop, some guy came in and bought the entire Cocteau Twins section, and I said to him, not many people know the Cocteau Twins, and I think they're amazing. And he said, "Yeah, I'm one of them." He apparently was buying his own records to sign and give away to fans and stuff, and was over in Australia, and obviously found some and didn't have them back. So grab
does
them.
Does he have to give himself royalties? That's the question I want to know. So there you go.
I don't know, but yeah, there are a lot of local celebrities that collect. Probably a lot of people would know Rove McManus collects, and Sam Pang collects as well. And they're all people I've dealt with in the past. But no, we don't have like John Travolta coming in and saying, "Have you got any Pulp Fiction merchandise or stuff like that?"
And we're about to finish up, but I'll leave this story there. I still always laugh the day I bought stuff in the store. My phone rang. It was the wife. This is a common story, and I thought you said they couldn't use Span. We do get stories like that. It is true. Couples will come in. The husband will say, "I'm not interested." And then after a couple of hours have gone past, he'll run back in and say, "Yep, she's off getting her hair done. I'll buy." It's completely true.
Cash sales are dying.
Yeah.
Except when someone wants to hide their purchases from their wife.
Yeah, it is a true story. So there you go. But it is a fantastic place. Wherever you live in this city or the world or whatever else, hopefully you've got something similar to you. If you don't, it's a really, really sad scenario because, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you just want to mix with people of your own ilk. You want to talk about things that other people will listen to and not laugh at you for. And the options for that are very limited. As you said, there are pop culture expos. There's actually one in our city coming up this Saturday, but they're usually like months apart. And online is great, but it's just still words on a screen. You want to physically interact with people is such a rare thing these days, which is very unfortunate. But if you can go to Aaron's store, at least that's one place you are definitely welcomed. What do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, running out of time. But the other side of that is, I don't know if Zach's still watching. I have known Zach since he was about 8 years old. And so you do meet people and you do know them their whole life, and you do experience their collecting journey with them, which is nice from my side of the desk as well.
Totally agree with you. Anyway, it's our hour is up, so we're going to leave everybody for this evening. Hope you've all enjoyed our chat about all the stuff that's going on. If you do get the opportunity to go into a store, you must do so. And for those who are thinking, what store are we talking about? Of course, we have Aaron's shop. So it's in Shop 3, number 1 on Main Street, Blackburn. Be sure to check it out if you're all your pop culture needs. And if you haven't done so already, check out all the stuff that's going on in the Sci-Fi Zone world. This thing's coming out everywhere. It's absolutely going completely troppo on the YouTube channel right at the moment. Mr. Aaron, any final words before we sign off for the evening?
Just thanks for everyone who contributed in the chat today. It really helps us if you like and follow us on whatever platform you're watching us on. And we shall see you next week.
Indeedy doody day. So there you go, party hard. Don't forget next Thursday, Fallout comes on. Make sure you watch that before you see us. Don't not watch us and watch that instead, even though we just promoted it tonight. There you go. Keep that in mind, kids. All right, we'll leave you to a party hard rock on. And as always, make sure you stay nerdy. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.